Welcome everyone. I'm Jeanette Wright. I'm the State Librarian here at the State Library of Queensland, and I'd like to welcome you to the State Library and the first of our Game Changer series. I'd first of all like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we are gathered. This place here at Kurilpa Point is a traditional meeting place for the local Indigenous peoples, and we like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their ancestors, past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge and welcome the Honourable Ian Walker, who's the Minister for Science, Information Technology, Innovation and the Arts. I'd like to welcome Ray Weeks, who's the Chair of the CEO Institute, who will be our facilitator for the conversation this evening. And I particularly want to welcome Shainiel Deo, founder and CEO of Halfbrick Studios, who is our guest speaker this evening. And I'd like to acknowledge other guests here, Professor Peter Little from the QUT Business School, Neil Roberts, the President of the Queensland Library Foundation, members of the Library Board of Queensland, the Queensland Library Foundation and the QUT Business School. And I'd especially like to acknowledge our generous donors and partners, Origin, Crow Horworth, Channel 7 and 4BC. I want to thank you all for being here with us tonight at the launch of Game Changers. This is a new initiative for the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is about celebrating, recording and retelling the stories of outstanding Queensland business leaders and their contributions to our state. We hope to foster a broader and deeper understanding of Queensland business history through the Hall of Fame program. These are the stories that have shaped not only Queensland's economic and commercial development, but obviously also the social and community lives of Queenslanders. Since 2008, we've inducted 34 business leaders into the Hall of Fame. And you can explore more of the Hall of Fame inductees and these leaders in a unique archive of oral histories, digital stories and resources. These are accessible both online and here at the State Library in the John Oxley Library Reading Room on level 4. The Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame is a successful partnership between QUT Business School, the State Library and the Queensland Library Foundation. And this year we're developing the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame program to provide new opportunities to support Queensland business, including this series which celebrates our state's innovation leaders. And there are many people who are making their mark in fields including business, technology and the creative industries. Game Changers gives us all a chance to hear them, to discover how they built their success and be inspired to take action towards our own goals. And so this evening, as we are speaking here this evening, there's a live feed to this series, this talk this evening, from the State Library of Queensland website. And in a few days, we'll have the presentation available from that website. So now it's my task, my very pleasant task, to introduce the Honourable Ian Walker, MP, who is our new Minister for Science, IT, Innovation and the Arts. So I'd like to ask the Minister to come up here to officially open the Game Changers series.
To Jeanette Wright, State Librarian, to Ray Weeks, Chair of the CEO Institute, to Shainiel Deo, to Peter Little and Neil Roberts, members of the Library Board of Queensland, the Queensland Library Foundation and the QUT Business School. Well, it's got written down here, good evening, I'm really excited to be here tonight. Well, I am really excited to be here tonight, all the more so because Parliament is sitting and is debating copyright infringement on the Commonwealth Games logo, and I've got leave to come over here to listen in and to have a drink, so I'm right. Look, the Game Changers, part of the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame initiative. Game Changers celebrates business achievement and then transforms that achievement into fuel for innovators across business, technology and the creative industries. how does it do that? Well, I'm glad you asked, because Game Changers brings together successful Queensland business and innovation leaders with emerging entrepreneurs and offers the chance to seek advice on building and then realising success. It's also a chance to network, make connections and to throw around ideas. So this is a great opportunity for the Minister for Science, Information Technology, Innovation and the Arts, because I see my portfolio as the creative engine room of Queensland. It's a space bursting with great ideas and really clever ways of realising them. And my government, the Queensland Government, is committed to building a creative, innovative environment where businesses thrive and where people want to live. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Shainiel Deo tonight. Shainiel has brought great fun to a great many people with Fruit Ninja, one of the most successful and downloaded game apps of all time. I think it's great that the Game Changers series is actually being opened by somebody who changed a game. I like that bit. So from his home right here in Brisbane, Shainiel has become an internationally recognised name in one of the world's most competitive industries. His journey to this point, and particularly the business model that drives Halfbrick's global reach, promises to make for very interesting listening. So I know that the emerging entrepreneurs, students and innovators here tonight will get a heck of a lot out of it, as they will from every one of the inspirational speakers who are set to take part in this Game Changers series. So now I'm keen to sit down and join you, but in doing so it gives me great pleasure to officially open the Game Changers Conversation series.
Thank you, Minister, and I'm now very pleased to welcome Ray Weeks to begin tonight's discussion and to introduce our guest speaker.
Thanks, Jeanette. The Game Changer series, as we all know, as the Minister has been saying, is all about bringing leaders in innovation. Our great Queensland entrepreneurs, the ones who have built remarkably successful national and international businesses. And they're here to share with us, they'll do this over the next three as well as tonight, their stories, their insights, the lessons they've learned along the way. Now, we're here to understand how these entrepreneurs build their companies, how they engender creativity, how they inspire their teams, how they manage the dynamics of change, and how they drive growth. We'll hear about the leadership attributes required in this entrepreneurial space. As we all understand, we live in volatile and uncertain times, and we need the game changers. Another reason we need to understand what works for successful entrepreneurs is because they're the ones more likely to create jobs. Big reason. An Ernst & Young global report last month said that 54% of entrepreneurs expect to hire people as against 28% of corporates. As you've heard from the Minister and Jeanette, Shainiel Deo, CEO of Halfbrick Studios, is the creator of this remarkable hit game, Fruit Ninja. It's one of the most successful apps of all time. It's on more than 1/3 of all US iPhones. Its user base is staggering. Shainiel told me the other day that 150 million check in every month, and around 15 to 20 million each day. So it's a staggering stat, isn't it? I should mention to you that Shainiel has received an outstanding alumnus award from QUT. And I was very, very, very pleased to be part of that presentation that day. Now, it's interesting that Fruit Ninja is the game that, despite the crisis in the Eurozone, despite crucial talks in Afghanistan and a faltering economy at home, the UK Prime Minister, David Cameron, spends a crazy and scary amount of time playing that particular app. So that worries the hell out of me. But Shainiel Deo, the CEO of Halfbrick Studios, is here tonight because he is a true game changer. Please welcome Shainiel Deo. Well, let's start. Firstly, tell us about your personal journey. Right, start with your personal journey, then describe for us the startup of Halfbrick Studios and how you came together.
How far do you want me to go back, Ray?
From the start.
From the start. Okay, I'll keep it short, but I wasn't born in Australia. I was born in Fiji, and thankfully my parents had the bright idea of moving here when I was 4. So I pretty much grew up in Australia, and I consider myself Australian, and I call Queensland home. So I guess my passion when I was younger was always playing computer games. So every chance I had, I'd be over at my mate's place next door playing his Atari 2600 or whatever system my friends had at that time. My parents wouldn't buy me one at the young age of 5 or 6, but I made do. So as I grew up, that continued, and I can list off all the different systems that I played during my time. But really, when it came time for me to choose what I wanted to do, it was either, I've got 2 passions in life. One is fishing, the other one's playing games. So I could have been a marine biologist or a computer games developer. So that was a tough choice, and it was really a 50-50 decision. My preference was probably to do marine biology, but my mum, she talked me out of it because she said, where are you going to find a job becoming a marine biologist? So, thankfully, she didn't have the same idea about becoming a game developer, so so I managed to take one of those 2 paths, and I'm really happy with where I ended up. So, but the Halfbrick story, that is definitely interesting. When I finished uni, there wasn't really a games industry in Brisbane or in Australia really. So I graduated in 1995, 96, and I had this computer science degree, and I just got a job, the first job that I got really. But at the same time, I kept up with my passion, so I was making games in my spare time, and just seeing what was happening with the industry. I didn't really give up on my dream. And really it was the year 2000 when the Queensland government started to invest in games, and they had a whole lot of scholarships for becoming a game developer. And I decided at that time I wasn't really enjoying my job. I'd find myself at the pub on a Friday drinking with my mates and just complaining about how our jobs sucked and they weren't very rewarding. So finally, I made the decision that, I got to stop doing that. It wasn't really good for me in the long run. And I should, once again, sort of pursue my passion. So at that time, I sort of quit my job and started, I went back to school, really. And that was a 1-year thing, but it was a beautiful thing for me because it gave me a chance to sort of mingle with other like-minded people and really build up that enthusiasm and passion about, what I love doing. And it also gave me a clear path, for how I could sort of make the passion of mine, I guess, my career as well. So, out of that, really, I think there's a bunch of 5 naive guys that thought that, hey, why do we need to work for someone else? We can just start our own company. And, luckily enough, that's what we did. We just, got together, pulled our meager savings together and started a company. And from that, through hard work and lots of tough times, I guess we slowly, started out small and built our way up to where we are now. So it's been an interesting journey.
So how'd you pick those 5 people or the 4 others?
I guess they're the 4 other guys stupid enough to jump into this endeavour with me. But no, I mean, they're guys that I did previous projects with. I think whenever you start this endeavour, you need to work with people that you can work with. And they were passionate and they sort of had skills, where I was weak. So we complemented each other.
So the 5 of you, how much money did you bring in, just the 5 of you, the initial seed capital?
I think I was a sucker there because I put in a lot more than the others. But really for us it was, with 30K we started Halfbrick. 30K,
yep. Okay. And tell me, how have you managed the growth of Halfbrick Studios? This has been a remarkable growth story. So take us through that. Take us through the transition from a startup to what is today a large-scale studio.
Okay. When we did start, I mentioned we put money in, and part of that was by choice because we didn't want to take outside money or get VC money. Not that it was really available at the time, but the key thing for us was that we had control over our destiny. So when we started out, it was 5 guys, and everything that we did from that stage onwards was slow and steady. We wanted to grow organically as our profits would allow. So first thing we did was obviously, try and find work. And thankfully, during the year 2000, that's when things really kicked up. And there were 5 or 6 companies in Brisbane that were making games for big international publishers. And we were smart enough to focus on a niche area where they didn't have, the skills. But they needed people that could do that type of work. So we found work fairly easily. It still took a bit of convincing. 5 guys fresh out of school, giving them $200,000, $300,000, dollar projects was not an easy thing to convince them of. But we did that, and we saved all of our pennies, and we sort of put on new teams. From 5, it's pretty interesting. You see the steps you go through. From 5 people to 10 people to 20 people to 50 people. All of those are really scary steps, each step of the way. But the thing is, you make that jump, you get comfortable, and the next step looks scary again, but same thing, you make that jump, you get comfortable, you get used to it. So that's pretty much what we did up until about 3 or 4 years ago, probably about 3 years ago, when we were around 30, 40 people. In the last 3 years, we've grown from that to about 80 people now. But all the while, we wanted it to be slow and steady. We didn't want to just hire people and then fire people when we didn't have a job. We wanted to make sure that we could keep people, in a stable, long-term job, and we wanted to make sure that we could build a really solid team, that was as passionate as the initial 5 guys.
So the initial venture capital, the founding shareholders.
Yep.
They're still the shareholders, or what? You already got a different shareholding structure.
They are not, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess when we started out, I said, a lot of the guys that I worked with were pretty young, and we were all really naive at that time. So some of them just didn't have the motivation and the passion to keep going when times were tough. So, there were splits along the way, and then other circumstances when times were tough caused other people to leave. So out of the 5, I'm the only one left.
Okay.
So I didn't kill them or anything.
Now you got offices in Sydney, Valencia in Spain, San Francisco in the next 3 months. Why did you choose to keep your head office in Queensland?
Like I said at the start, Queensland's my home, and really this is one of the best places in the world to live. So I really love the lifestyle and the pace, that we have here, and I guess there is a really talented and creative, pool of people in Brisbane as well that a lot of people don't realise. So for me, that's definitely important, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to be based in, say, Silicon Valley or one of those other hotspots because, there's all these other pressures that are there whenever I go to Silicon Valley or, to America, it just blows me away the mentality that is over there. It's very cutthroat, very mercenary, and people just change from, job to job, just chasing a buck. People do that here too, but people are more passionate here, and they don't have that type of mentality. And we're trying to build people that, can work together for 3 to 4 to 5 years and really gel, because that's when you get teams that can create, phenomenal, awesome work that's world class. When you got people that are sort of chopping and changing, it's very hard to build something that's great and sustainable.
We'll come back to how you choose your team members shortly, but how do you manage a workforce situated around the world?
It's very hard, but the key thing is communication, and it's something that I always try to keep on top of. Talking to the guys in San Francisco or talking to the guys in Spain, even if like my work hours are pretty interesting. So I talk to the guys in the US in the morning, and that could be any time from 7 a.m. onwards. And then, I talk to my team here during the day, and then I talk to the guys in Europe in the evenings, and that can be any time up to 8, 9, 10 at night too. Not that I work from 7 to 10 every day, that'd be crazy, but making time to speak to those guys is very crucial, and you need to do it on a regular basis. Otherwise, they start to feel isolated, and they don't feel as appreciated, and they can go off down the wrong path as well.
So listen, tell us about you. What drives you?
Definitely passion for what I do. So, you know, I did a job that I wasn't passionate about, and I did that. You know, I just felt that I couldn't do that for the rest of my life. So I really wanted to do something that excited me. And, you know, I always say that regardless of what's going on, I'm always excited to get out of bed, jump up in the morning and get to work and see what the new day is going to bring. So I think that passion for what I do. But I've always been a very competitive sort of guy as well. So, you know, I like to compete and I want to create something that's great and that is the best. And I want to, I guess, you know, instill that into my team and empower them as much as I can to sort of take on the world.
So describe the DNA, describe the culture at Halfbrick Studios, and then we'll talk about how you select the people.
Okay, yeah. So, you know, and I keep talking about the word passion. Everyone that we hire needs to be passionate about games. That is the key thing that sort of ties us all together. We have, you know, designers, we have artists, we have engineers, we have, you know, managers, we have project managers, all sorts of people. We have accountants as well. And the thing that ties us all together is a love for games. So I think that's very important. But the other thing is, you know, our values are, you know, we value our people first and foremost. We value quality and attention to detail, and we value, you know, continual improvement, you know, being better than we were yesterday. So we look for that in everyone that we hire. And the other thing too is, you know, I'm not the type of guy that likes to tell people what to do, and I'm not a control freak, although people will tell you different. But I like to ensure that our guys have a lot of autonomy. I like to paint the goal for what we're trying to do, but I like to give them, you know, enough flexibility to sort of achieve that goal. So I think autonomy is very important to the culture of Halfbrick. And the way we're structured, you know, we have a very flat structure. There's not a lot of hierarchy. You know, there's a lot of guys, independent teams that are responsible for getting the job done.
So how do you find the time to be proactive rather than reactive? Does that feed into that?
Yeah, and that's, yeah, sort of making sure that people have the autonomy to look after certain bits and pieces certainly helps. But being proactive instead of reactive is certainly something that I'm good at times, but I'm bad at as well. And the reason for that is, you know, with success come a lot of opportunities, and it's very hard to say no to all of those opportunities. So, you know, when I'm saying yes too much, I'm reactive, but when I can find the strength to say no, then I'm a lot more proactive. But the key thing is, you know, I need to focus on 2 or 3 tasks, or 2 or 3 key goals at a time. Any more than that, and you start to get reactive. And I spend a lot of time, you know, blocking out my diary so that I can concentrate on those things. If you don't do that, then once again, you're going to be reactive. You know, when people come up to your desk, you know, you're just going to jump and chase the next problem or issue that comes up. So, you know, focusing on fewer things and dedicating enough time to concentrate on those is very important.
So that hits your leadership style. Anything else about the leadership attributes that you think are needed in the entrepreneurial space? And also, what do you say no to?
Yeah, okay. I think you definitely have to be the type of person that has a vision, like a bigger vision that. And more importantly, you need to be able to paint that picture of that vision to your team. Otherwise, they're not going to get what's up in here. And I think you need to have perseverance. You know, if you look at Halfbrick in the early days, you know, I mentioned there were 5 of us. Not all of those guys had the perseverance to keep going when things were tough. You know, to have that end goal in your mind, but then also work towards it. So I think those 2 things are the most important, having a vision and perseverance. And I would say, you know, persistence and perseverance are definitely so important.
You give your employees a share of the profits. Just describe the way you want them to get a stake in the business.
Yeah, and I think that's the key word, sort of having a stake in the business. So we do share profits. my philosophy is, if the company's doing well, we're all doing well. And money's a great motivator for people, but actually having a stake in something and having ownership in something is even more powerful, even if there wasn't money flowing from that. So for me, it's, at the moment we're sharing profits, but I definitely want to move towards giving people, a stake in the company as well. I feel that is very powerful for our staff, particularly when we picked our team, so carefully, and we know these are guys that we want to be working with for a long time. I think they deserve that.
So employee share options and
Yeah,
other means of
something
getting
like that.
stake.
Yep.
Good. And have you responded to the changing workforce in the technology, the IT, the games industry?
Yeah, that's been
It's pretty volatile.
It is pretty volatile. For us, I think we've been fortunate that I guess a lot of people want to work for Halfbrick, and that's both true locally and overseas. Although we do focus on hiring people locally, but it's been interesting seeing the big shift in what's happening in games. Before it used to be all box product and things you buy at retail. Now it's all digital and it's all mobile. Trying to find new graduates has been tough because the courses sort of lag, and a lot of people were focused over here, but the target shifted to here. That's been hard, but the other problem for us now is as we've expanded and we're doing so many things and we have so many opportunities, we just don't need, we still need the people that we hire, but we need this whole new bunch of people, more focused around business and new disciplines that are necessary for games, and it's hard to find those people. And a lot of those people don't exist in Australia yet. They exist in San Francisco, but we need to try and train people up here that have those skills as well. So it's very tough to juggle that.
So tell us a bit about that. How do you go about improving the skills and the thinking in your workplace?
Yep. And I guess that ties back to our interview process. And I don't know if anyone has been through our interview process here, but
Put up your hands if you have. Yeah.
don't hold it against me, please. But it is pretty tough, and it's pretty stringent. And there's two things we look for. The first one is whether you can do the job, and I think that's the easiest part of our interview process. But it is still pretty tough. We actually make people do the work, in front of us or with someone, so that we can actually see that you can do the work. So, if you're going for a programming position, we'll get you to stand up on in front of a whiteboard and write code, so we can see that you can do it. If you're an artist, we'll get you to make some art, so we can see what you can do. If you're a designer, we do, 4-hour-long design test and see just how creative you are. But that part aside, the most important part is fit. We want to find people that fit within our team and our culture. And so, we often get cases where people get through the first part, but when it comes to fit, they fall down for some particular reason. Either they're not very good at communicating, or, they have some other wacky problems that preclude them from, working with a team. But, I think that's the most important part for your company. You need to make sure that you hire people that are a good fit with your culture and your team.
So tell us a story about the worst fit you had.
Jeez. There's so many. There are so many. Some of them can be just attitude problems from, if we're hiring someone for a particular job. At Halfbrick, we need people from lots of disciplines working together to get something done. And sometimes we get guys that probably are skillful at more than one, or sometimes not, and they think they are, but they like to tell other people, what they should be doing. And when we have like one of our senior designers, someone like Luke, who was the creator of Fruit Ninja, working with someone and telling him how to do a design, and the guy comes back to him and says, I thought about your design, but I didn't like it. I thought it was terrible, so I did it this way. That's automatically a big cross. And it's not going to work out too well. And then you got other problems from, terrible body odor and other things which can be solvable, but in some instances it's probably best to pass on that candidate.
So why do you believe Halfbrick is sustainable? Tell us about your view, your long-term future.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, we're not trying to grow the company to be 500 people. And this is an interesting story because I'm sure everyone's heard of Angry Birds and Rovio. They're one of our, I wouldn't say competitors. I mean, we get on really well with them and we sort of catch up with them fairly often. 2 years ago, we were both 40 people. And, we used to talk about that, and I'd see them every couple of weeks, and they would have grown to 80, 100, 120. Like, as of now, they're like 650 people, and, we're 80 now. So just the phenomenal growth that they've gone through. Obviously, their brand's very successful, which is awesome. But our goal has always been to grow sustainably. If we have a hit, we're not going to put on 500 people. We want, slow and steady growth. And we make sure that every person we put on is a great fit and is really contributing a lot to the team. And, when you just look at our cash flow and our profit, we want to make sure that, we're making like 5 times the profit, that we are compared to how much we're spending every day. So we're really careful about how quickly we grow, making sure that our cash flow is really solid, not getting lazy and sloppy. And we're always investing in R&D and trying to look at what's coming down the track. I think we probably put about 20% back into R&D, and a lot of that helps with coming up with the next great idea or the next back-end technology that we need to power our games for the next 10 years. So we're very forward-thinking in that regard.
Those margins you just mentioned, a lot of companies would kill to have those margins. So you're looking at an annual growth from here. What do you predict? About 20%? Is that what you're looking at?
I would say, you mean in terms of staff? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say 20% is where we want to try and cap it.
Okay.
Yep.
And revenue?
Revenue it's doing pretty well at the moment.
Thought you'd say.
So hopefully we'll keep it that way.
But your success relies on the continued development of original products. How do you respond to that challenge?
It is. I think that's part of our challenge. We do need to keep on coming up with new games and new hit games, but the model as it is now is really switching to the software as a service model or games as a service model. So we do create games, but the job's not done when we put it out there. We continually update these games so that people have more content to come back to, and they keep coming back to our games, they keep playing our games. And all of that ties into a lot of things. Like, one is, if you're playing our game every 2 weeks or whatever, you're going to be a marketing tool for us, because if you meet with your friend for a coffee or you're at the bus stop, people are going to see the game you're playing. Hopefully it's our game. But if you're playing the game, even if it's a free version, and if we're showing ads in that game, then that's more impressions and eyeballs that we're getting. So we're really trying to make sure that people are playing our games, not just for a week, but more for like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So that's one part, supporting our existing games, and that's a lot of hard work. And people get sick of touching Fruit Ninja. It's hard to believe maybe for people outside, but inside the company, no one wants to work on a Fruit Ninja game ever again. And I can't blame them, because you do get burnt out on it. But coming up with new games is very important. And one of the things that we do, and we are going to do another round in a month, is we pretty much let everyone in the company pitch ideas, from our designers to our engineers to the accountant. Anyone can pitch a game, and there's no bad ideas. What will happen usually is people, form around the good ideas, and they develop prototypes. We call this process Halfbrick Fridays. We used to do this just on Fridays, but now we have more scope. We can do it for a week or a month or whatever. So that process really helps us to come up with great new ideas. So the idea is, you pitch an idea, you form a team, you make a prototype, you get back together in a week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, and you showcase it. And then typically what happens is the games that have a lot of potential, people within the company are just playing them, because everyone checks out the games, and the good ones they'll keep playing. So they bubble to the top, and then we can, easily pick those games and take them to the next stage.
Listen, there would have been times when you felt you lost it. The moments where you felt this is just not going to work. How did you recover from that?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, during the early days, we were dependent on, publishers paying us to do projects and relying on them paying on time, and obviously, company was relying on me to get new projects so that we could keep making games and stay in business. And there are plenty of times when, for reasons out of our control, one of our publishers couldn't pay, and those times, you had to scramble and dig into your own pocket just to be able to pay people, to keep going. And it's those times you're sort of scratching your head, sort of wondering, why am I doing this? But there's always one little thing that you'll see, whether it's in a game that your team's working on, or some random email that you get from someone, or a letter from a fan, and then it just makes sense. And that's when you need to be able to persevere and continue on through those, because if you've got that vision and you've got that passion and you're willing to persevere, like I feel you can get through all of those obstacles. And we always, thankfully, we're always in a position where we're looking ahead and trying to adjust and pivot before things got too bad. So when the GFC hit, thankfully we were already making games for ourselves and releasing them on digital platforms such as Xbox Live Indie Games and PSN, not iPhone at that stage. So when the GFC hit and projects dried up, we had revenue coming from elsewhere. So, I think you need to have that perseverance, but you also need to have that, foresight to be able to pivot.
We'll come back. The CEO's role is described as wonderful moments strung together between hours of terror.
Yeah.
I think this captures it for you?
Yeah, I think it perfectly sums up what I just said. At times there are long stretches of terror, and it's quite painful. But there's always those moments of joy too. And then there are other times like now for us, things are going really well. So there's less terror, or there's no terror, which is awesome for me. And there's a lot of joy. So, but I'm always realistic. I know that throughout our career, there's always been ebb and flow, There's always ups and there's always downs. And we're in an up right now, and I'm sure that, there'll be points where, obviously, hopefully we'll never get to the lows that we experienced before, but there's always going to be that ebb and flow. So if you, if you can go into it with that in mind, then you always know if you can work through those ebbs, you're always going to get to the peaks again. So, and I've been through that cycle a number of times. But what you said definitely sums up a CEO's existence.
So growth and success, they cover up a lot of mistakes. What I've seen with your company is that you've got an underpinning of financial discipline, you've got efficiency. Just describe those disciplines you've built into the organisation.
Yeah, and we definitely are very disciplined in what we do. I mean, it's a contrast as well. I mean, we provide a lot of flexibility, but there is also a lot of discipline built into that as well. And I think you can't go one way or the other. You need to sort of have both and be able to balance those conflicting ideas at the same time. And sometimes we do get off balance and we go too far one way, but then we need to bring it back again too. So there's always that fight. I always try to make sure that we are different to other companies. Like, I've worked at various companies and I've seen what they're like, and I don't want to end up like a lot of companies. So for me, the constant fight is always making sure we're not going too far one way, and sometimes you make the mistake and go too far the other way, and then you've got to try and balance it up. And but I think it's useful, that struggle, because it always keeps you on your toes. And then if you're always doing that and you're always trying to fight for that balance and trying to balance conflicting ideas, you're going to be a different company that's interesting. And everyone that sort of walks into Halfbrick can sort of sense that and pick that up straight away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs will say the way you the way you win is probably thinking 5 to 10 years out. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And I think it comes down to what I talked about, having a goal and planning and working back from that. Being able to see where you want to be in 5 years is really important. And Halfbrick's been around for 10 years now. And, at certain points there, we could see 5 years ahead and we knew what we wanted to do. And then we'd get to that point. And then once again, for me, there's always, when you reach that goal, there's always the period of, what do you do next, Because we scaled some pretty big heights recently. And I was sort of stuck in this almost rut, I would say, where, you achieved a lot and it's like, what do you want to do next? Do you want to do more? Can it get better than this? And it's just trying to find that next goal that really excites you. And, I've certainly found that. And I've only really found that recently, probably in the last 3 months, for what I want to do next. But it is mapping out that next 5-year goal, what's over the horizon, and then figuring out what you need to do, all the steps to get there. And that really, motivates you and inspires you to get there. So it's definitely very important. And when you don't have that, that period, like I mentioned, for a year or so where I didn't really know what to do, your company picks up on that too. They can see it. All the guys can see that, and you are rudderless. Even though I said I'm not a control freak or whatever. The guys look to me to set the goals and the direction and paint that picture for what we want to do. So it's very important that you do that.
And a number of successful entrepreneurs are described as not believing that the normal rules apply to them, that the normal rules apply to them. Do you tend to agree with that?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think so. Yeah, I've always felt from a young age. Hopefully, this doesn't come across the wrong way, but I always felt that I would amount to something and be able to do something special and big. And that's something that I always had all the way along. And is actually one of my best mates now that I've known for 25 years or whatever. I think when we were 15 or 16, maybe he could see that, that I felt that way. And just out of the blue one day he said, you're not going to be anything special. What are you doing? And I didn't feel I was, pompous or anything like that. Maybe I was, I don't know. But that really shook me for a period of time. I was like, really? What? And it took me quite a while, maybe a year to sort of erase that from my memory. And I still remember that. And I actually brought that up with him about 3 months ago. So remember when we were 16 and you said I wouldn't amount to anything? Look at me now. No. But so I think it's true. Like I think people, maybe entrepreneurs, don't feel the usual rules apply to them. And I always feel that there's no problem that I can't solve or tackle. I always have that mindset.
So having said that, what advice would you give to would-be entrepreneurs in this field?
Yeah. It's easy giving advice, but the hard thing is putting it into practice and building those habits that are going to make you successful. I talk about setting goals, and I talk about having, being persistent and having perseverance and all of those things. They're two things that I don't know if you're born with. Maybe some people have it more than others, but they're things that you need to practice and really work on to build. And I think the best advice I can give to you is, start now. Set a goal, whether it's 5 years or 1 year or even for next week. Set a goal, figure out what you want to do to achieve that goal, and go through that process. And the more you do that, it just becomes an ingrained sort of thing, and automatically you're doing that for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then you can set bigger and longer goals. And not giving up at the first obstacle you hit is very important, and you're always going to hit obstacles, and some will come sooner than others, and sometimes you'll get through one goal and not hit an obstacle, but the first one you hit, you can't stop there. You need to sort of break through it, do what you can to break through it. And the beauty is, like, you know, your solutions come to you at any time, and you guys probably know this too. You know, when you're lying in bed reading a book, or when you're, you know, doing something else at the beach, you know, ideas come to you. When you wake up, or when you are asleep and you wake up and an idea comes to you. Also, have a notepad beside your bed for when that happens. I keep telling myself to do that, but I haven't done that yet. And there's so many solutions that I've lost because I forgot them the next morning.
Now listen, I've got to talk about Steve Jobs, because
Yep.
you and I have spoken about this. What Steve Jobs said to his people was, don't be afraid, you can do it.
Yep.
He had what they call a reality distortion field, and it compelled people to do amazing things that they thought were impossible.
Yep.
Does this capture some of your thinking?
Definitely. I was telling you, I think I have a reality distortion field implanted here somewhere. But yeah, and I guess it comes down to believing that you can do pretty much anything. And I always find that even working with our guys and our team, even though we've achieved so much, I have to constantly tell them all the time that, hey, this is what we're going to do this year. And at the start of the year, a lot of them just flat out don't believe we're going to do it. And sometimes we don't hit our targets, but more often than not, because we have set that goal and we figured out what we need to do to hit it, we do hit that target. And then they're all surprised, and sometimes it'll be a monetary figure. It's like, okay, we're going to hit this much revenue this year. And not that I like to do that, because it's not really motivating for creative people. But, you know, you put a big number out there, and then at the end of the year when you hit it, and most people are just like, oh, just, you know, never thought we'd get anywhere near that. Or there's other big tasks that we're trying to achieve when there's a team of 200 people working on something, and we've got a team of 10. And I say, well, we can match those guys and do that. And they don't believe it, but then, you know, they figure out ways to do it, and ways to do it smarter than 200 guys. So I think, you know, I don't really think I have that Steve Jobs reality distortion effect, but I like to push our guys to do big things.
Years ago, I used to go out to try and buy companies on behalf of a multinational company.
Yep.
And I'd go into these offices and say, look, I represent a multinational company, I want to buy this company on their behalf. Are you interested in an offer? And I'll be talking to guys in their early 30s, and they're a high growth industry, and they look at me and say, why would I want to sell out of this? I'm having too much fun. You would have had a lot of offers for your business.
Yes.
Why don't you cash in? Why don't you cash out?
Yeah, I I asked myself that quite a bit, but I think you answered that. You know, I am having a lot of fun, and I'm doing what I'm passionate about, and you know, I've put in the hard work to get the company to the stage where it's at now, where we could be doing this for a long time. And I'm still fairly young. Like, if I did sell this company, then what would I do? I'd probably sit around for a year or two and then try to do something else, but I wouldn't be at the point where I am now. I have the vehicle that I have now to do what I want to do. So for me, it's and it's never been about the money anyway. I told you, it's a passion of mine, and I think if you follow your passion, then the money will come regardless. So yeah, so I have had lots of offers, but you know, I don't want to sell. But also, all of the guys that work at Halfbrick are really passionate too. I'd feel really terrible sort of selling that to some Globo Corp company that goes in and destroys it, you know, within 2 years, because I've seen my friends that have had games companies that have been successful sell their companies, and that's what happens. You know, 2 years, the thing's nothing like what it was, you know, when they actually bought the company. And then I wouldn't be there in 2 years' time. I would have checked out anyway.
Now, time for questions. Who would like to ask a question? Do we have a microphone? Anyone? Yep. Greg?
I think there's a mic coming.
Is the microphone coming?
That was fabulous and good to hear me.
Just wait a second, Greg. Wait for this. Take your time, it's fine. Just right here, thanks. Thanks, Chris.
That was fabulous, thank you. Can I ask you about, just talking about your passion there for a moment, where's your passion going to take you in the next 5 years?
Where's it going to take me? I think it's going to take me to creating, you know, probably the most influential and well-regarded game developer in the world in 5 years' time.
Good. That deserves applause. Come on. Can I just ask you, as a company that primarily deals with digital content, how do you ensure you keep a record of your growth and development? Is that something that you think about?
That's tough.
It's very early stages.
I think the library people and the museum people always hassle me about getting copies of our games, and I'm like, well, how are you going to play them in 10, 20 years, you know? So that's really tough, especially in games. Trying to record all of that. Obviously, internally within Halfbrick, we track all of our games, and we have copies of all of our games. I'm not sure if we have all the systems to play them still, but it's very important for us. But yeah, in terms of preserving them for the wider community, that's always a tough question with games.
Okay. Other question? Yeah, right here.
For the fellow IT nerds out there, what business aspects did you have to pick up once you kind of got up and running?
All of them.
So what would you suggest, we go out and do MBAs? What would you suggest for us?
I'll tell you what I did. I did IT at uni, and before we started Halfbrick, we actually got onto the NICE program, which is the New Enterprise Incentive Scheme, and they give you a short course in small business management, and that's pretty much all I did, just so I could do the books and all of that. But everything else, like, when we're a small company, I had to wear a lot of hats. So you learn all of that along the way. I think there probably is merit in doing an MBA or something like that, but I've seen other guys do it as well. And once again, I think it comes down to actually using it day to day in practice. And that's how I learn everything I know now. So I probably don't know half the things an MBA does, but I probably know more than they do in other areas as well. So it's your choice, one or the other.
The question right here. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, sorry, up here, is it? Sorry, yeah.
Shainiel, great to hear of your success. I'm coming from a different perspective, and I'd like to know what your company's position as far as corporate social responsibility is concerned, because you've done an awful lot, obviously. What about giving back?
Yeah, that's a good point. So my priorities are obviously my family, first and foremost, then my staff, and then I guess the wider community. So, for myself, I think I have more than enough for what I need to do. My focus at the moment is on my staff and making sure they have more than enough for what they need to do. But at the same time, we have supported various appeals, whether it's flood appeals or other things that come up. We're not actively supporting any particular charity or anything at this point, but it's certainly something that we're open to. Put your hand up. But see, this is what I was afraid of. But we definitely do put stuff back into the community. We've done other things like, I know we've sponsored plantations around the world. Fruit Ninja was obviously a common theme, so we planted plantations around the world so that local communities could actually make money from that, in the future, and various other bits and pieces. So we certainly are open to that, but it's definitely, our team is where my focus is right now.
Question?
I've sat here absolutely enthralled. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience listening to you. But I do have a very sort of tired old question.
Sure.
How many of them are girls that you employ?
Yeah.
And if not, how important is it to recruit them?
It's really important to recruit them. Don't get me wrong. We have 75 people. We have six women working for us right now. So it's a pretty damning statistic. But if you look at how many women actually apply to us, it's the percentage is just tiny. So we don't have a very big pool to draw from in the first place, and so it's almost a chicken and egg sort of scenario. I mean, we need more candidates to select from before we can get more of them into Halfbrick. But I think it's really important. I spend a lot of time in Asia as well, visiting various studios there, places like Taiwan, Japan, China, Korea. And the balance there is pretty much 50-50, which is...
It's a good job for a girl there. It's not considered a good job for a girl.
Yeah, so, changing those stereotypes is definitely important. But we would love to get more.
Thanks for that. Question?
Yeah, the question. Silicon Valley, as you know, is a very, very rich ecosystem for entrepreneurship. They have venture capitals, all different types of engineering support, technical management, even subsequent rounds of investment. We don't have anywhere near that level of ecosystem. Here in Brisbane, what would you like to see if you could, snap your fingers and start to see improvements in the local Brisbane investment in entrepreneurial ecosystem? What would you like to see here that you think would help companies, other small companies, achieve the heights that you've achieved?
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And just quickly, I guess it was at least 3 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years before I was contacted by an Australian VC, after the US VC started contacting me. So 2.5, 3 years after that. It's pretty damning. But things are changing. There are people that are coming back from Silicon Valley that are starting up little funds. I think there's Right Pedal Studios here in Brisbane that is obviously providing funds to get people off, and the mentoring to get people off the ground. So I think more of those things definitely are what we need.
But there's still not enough risk capital, is there?
There's still not enough, but there are more and more funds that I hear about that are starting to look in this space, and that are also setting up to invest in this space. So it is happening.
Let me ask another question coming from Steve Jobs' view. His success was described as a result of his unusual combination of technical smarts, strategic vision, fit for design, and sheer force of character. How do you fit that definition?
I think I fit some of those to varying degrees. I definitely don't have his design smarts, but I think one of the key things for my success is definitely the technical capabilities that I had, and the ability to sort of understand all parts of what goes into making the products that we make. Having that sheer force of character is very important. I've had to use that on a number of occasions, but I try not to. I try not to unleash the beast, but sometimes it gets out there. So that's very important. And what was the third one? There's the design and the
strategic vision.
That's really important. So I think you definitely need to have the strategic vision.
Good. Another question right here. Thanks.
Thanks for talking to us today. I've noticed that you've recently moved on with Jetpack into the freemium space, and I was wondering, how did that experience work out for you? Do you think it's just a hype, or do you think it's a sustainable model?
So the experience worked out really well for us. We built that game to be a freemium game from the start, and it was like freemium 1.0. Freemium games have moved on from there. But I think as a business model, it is a lot more sustainable. If you look at what happened after we set Jetpack free in terms of revenue, it definitely spiked, I don't know how many times, 10 times what we were making. And then also the drop-off has been a lot more gradual, and where it sort of flatlined is so much higher than it would have been if it remained a free game. So I think the future definitely is moving towards those free experiences. The key thing for us is how we execute those. We don't want to be that developer that's always got our hand in your pocket, wanting money. We want to provide an experience that you feel like paying for, rather than us having to ask you all the time.
Thank you.
Any other question there? Yes, right here.
I think I can say, just out of interest, I was wondering how you actually made your fit criteria for when you're hiring.
Sure.
Did everyone hear that question? Just might do that again if you don't mind.
Sorry, just out of interest, how you actually made your fit criteria. It actually sounds quite interesting and possibly complicated to make.
Yes, it can be. It can be when you're trying to tease information out of the candidate, but it comes back to the values that I mentioned at the start. We look for those values in the people that we're hiring. And then other things just like communication. And then I also touched on passion, so passion for making games. So if I asked you, what was the first game you played, maybe you'll be able to tell me like that, maybe not. And then you might go on to about, oh yeah, and I also love this game, and you can tell straight away, if someone's really passionate or not. So the hard part is trying to get the information out. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. But for us, really, the criteria is, making sure they align with our values, and that they can work in a team, and that they are passionate. They're the 5 things.
With the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame, as Jeanette said, it's about really opening up stories, telling the untold stories about remarkable people, remarkable companies, the economic and social contributions that they made to Queensland's development. And there are some really telling stories. How important is it, do you think, for institutions like the State Library, Shainiel, to tell the stories of companies like Halfbrick with this?
I think it's really important. I think I was saying to Susan earlier, next week I'm going to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. And a huge part of me going there and sending other people from Halfbrick there is to hear those inspirational talks from other developers. And so for people that, can't make it over there or can't go to those types of conferences, we have some, like you said, amazing people here in Brisbane and Queensland. I think people can get that here as well, and I think the fact that the State Library does these talks is, an amazing thing and should be commended.
Final question?
Related to the question before, has Halfbrick done any angel investing before, or are you looking at doing any angel investing in other games companies?
We have not in games companies. We have made strategic investments in other companies that we're working with. But I wouldn't rule that out of the equation. So we could definitely do that in the future, and I think we will be doing that in the future.
Shainiel, we could go on for days here, but we do have to draw it to a close. So could I ask you please to thank Shainiel Deo.
Shainiel, I particularly want to thank you. Sharing your insights about your business, your personal characteristics, your values about your business. That's exactly why we're involved in connecting with business in Queensland, why the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame wanted to start these kinds of conversations, and you were the standout person that we needed to talk to, particularly looking at innovation. And I would like to remind everyone that, just as Shainiel says, that the State Library is running an exhibition at the moment. I'm sure many of you will have already visited it. It's Garage Gamers, and it's on our Level 2 exhibition area. So you're very welcome to come back to that. It's a free exhibition. And of course, Halfbrick is featured in that, and a version of Fruit Ninja where you can actually stand and do it instead of finger passing across the screen. So I'd encourage you all to come back for that. And I would especially like to thank Ray Weeks for facilitating the conversation this evening. And this was, if you remember, the first of a series called Game Changers, and there will be another conversation on the 17th of April. And Ray will be talking to Heath Goddard, who's grown Pillow Talk into a national retail chain. And I particularly want to thank our Minister for coming to the State Library to launch the series, because we see this as an extended part of our engagement with the business community. So I'd invite you now to join us all on the Queensland Terrace for refreshments, and I encourage you to take the time to meet one new person. So it's just out the door and to your right. Thank you, everyone.